My name is Jenna Matzer, and I'm conducting this interview on behalf of Unity Hospice. Today is Thursday, October 1st, 2015, and we're sitting here today with Charles Ohlfest, also known as Chuck, of South Elgin, Illinois. The purpose of this interview is to record the veteran stories of Mr. Ohlfest for inclusion in the Library of Congress's Veterans History Project. All right, can you go ahead and state your full name?
Charles Ohlfest.
Date of birth?
2/27/29.
What branch of service?
Army.
And your highest rank attained?
Pardon?
What's the highest rank attained?
Corporal.
War or conflict served, if any?
Korean.
Korean War. Where and when were you born?
2/27/29.
Where? And were you born in?
Valparaiso, Indiana.
Okay. Who were your parents and what were their occupations?
My dad's name was Charles Earl, and he always went by just Earl Ohlfest. He never used his first name. And he had a number of different things, but he was basically selling electric generators during the Depression days. And then he started selling refrigerators. And then he worked for a Ford tractor company towards the end of his life. He was selling Ford tractors out of Orland Park, Illinois.
Did you have any siblings?
Yes, I got 2 brothers and 2 sisters. I
Okay.
got Art, which has passed away, and Helen, which is the next, and she's passed away. And then my brother Bob, he just passed away recently, and then myself. And then I got a younger sister that lives in Oregon, and she's still alive.
Okay. Were any of them military? Were any of them military?
When was they?
Did any of them serve in the military?
No. Oh, my 2 brothers did.
They did?
They were in World War II.
Okay.
The older brother, I'm not sure what theaters he worked in, but my brother Bob, he worked on the China-Burma India Road. I know that. That's where he spent a large part of his Army career.
So they were both in the Army too?
Yes, they were both in the Army.
What were you doing before you entered the service?
I was working in a grocery store
Okay.
as a clerk, just a produce manager at a high-low food store.
And so you were in the Army and you were drafted, correct?
Yes, I was drafted.
Okay. And how old were you when you were drafted?
I think I was 21.
Okay. All right. How long did you serve in the military? About?
Just a little, well, about 2 years.
About 2 years?
Yeah.
Okay. What happened when you departed for training camp and during your early days of training?
Well, I was with the first group that went down and opened up Fort Leonard Wood. After World War II, they shut the camp down and they vacated it. And then my troop of people that went down, we were the first ones to occupy the barracks and everything. So we opened it up, and that's where I took my training. I took 8 weeks of training for infantry, and then they changed it over to infantry, and then they changed it over to an engineering camp. And then I took another 6 weeks of basic training in the engineering camp.
Do you recall any of your instructors?
No, I don't recall any of them, but I was also an instructor later on. That's where they sent me to a training school to learn to be an instructor on the Bailey Bridge, which spanned gorges if the trucks had to go across, or any Army vehicles, and pontoon bridges and mine warfare. So I was an instructor for all 3 of those down at Fort Leonard Wood for the remaining months that I was in the States.
Fort Leonard Wood is where?
Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Missouri. And how did you? What kind of specialized training did you receive? What went into training to be an instructor?
Just how to present the material to the men, and make sure that I knew the proper process for building this bridge, because they could very easily gotten hurt if they wasn't done properly. So I had a lot of special training in that, in how to do that. And also mine warfare.
How did you adapt to military life, including physical regimen, barracks, food, social life?
I think I did quite well. I didn't have a bad time with it. The only thing that happened to me was my hands got frostbit down at Fort Leonard Wood when we went out on one of our marches. And that's the only thing that bothered me down there.
So you were at Fort Leonard Wood for a while. Where else did you serve?
Then they shipped me over to Germany to be in the S3 over there. And I spent approximately 6 months. A new general came on to Fort Leonard Wood, and they said all old-timers with more than 6 months to go of service had to go overseas. And I had just a little bit over 6 months to go, maybe 2 weeks more than 6 months. So I got orders to go overseas. And that's where they sent me then. For 6 months over there doing S3 work, or map surveys and things. No conflict.
What were your feelings when you heard that you were being shipped over to Germany? How did you feel when you heard that news?
I felt rather good about it, really, because I was going to Germany rather than over to Korea. So if you have to go, I'm glad I went to Germany.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting being there also.
So did you serve your remaining, what was that, about 8 months
Yes.
then in Germany?
Yes, I did. I got discharged at Fort Riley, and I think that was in Kansas. I'm not positive, but Fort Riley I got discharged from.
What are some of the memories you have during your experience in Germany?
Oh, I think probably the way friendly people and their backwards way of delivering food. For example, I was sitting in a restaurant one day and they delivered the half of a cow to them on a wagon, open wagon. They pulled a little red wagon, and that's the way they got their meat delivery. So I don't know what the rest of their food delivery was like, but I found that rather interesting. But the people were very interesting, and I really liked their food.
Yeah. What was your favorite food over there?
Wiener Schnitzel, which is veal, breaded veal. And that was one of my favorites.
What was the weather like over in Germany when you were over there?
About the same as here.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was very comparable to this.
Okay.
It was cold and it got hot in the summertime. Well, in the short time that I was there, yes.
Yeah. What kinds of friendships and camaraderie did you form while serving?
I made one real good friend. His name was Lloyd Shanks. He was with me over in Germany. And we met up again when I came back to the States. I got a job with a company called the WWII Company. And after I went to work for them, I found out he was also working in their home office. And I didn't know that before I went there. So we did meet up again and spend a little time together here in the States, talking about old times.
Do you keep in contact with him now?
No, he's retired, and so am I. And he's in Colorado, and I'm here, so we don't see each other at all anymore.
Okay. How did you stay in touch with family and friends back home?
How did they think?
How did you keep in touch with family and friends?
Only by letter. They didn't have cell phones, so all I could do was letters, and then we were allowed to make a phone call. I forget exactly what it was, but I think maybe once every week or once every 2 weeks, we were allowed to use the phone and call home. But mostly by letter.
What did you do for recreation and when you were off duty?
I really didn't do too much. I didn't play baseball or any of the sports or anything. So I really didn't do too much. I don't remember having that much free time.
Yeah. So I want to kind of expand on your experience in Germany. Hang on. Okay, so I kind of want to jump back to your time in Germany. Can you kind of go over exactly what your job duties were when you were there?
When I went over there, I got assigned to an S3 unit, doing map overlays and just general Army paperwork, filing and that type of thing, and a lot of typing in the office.
Would you say that the skills that you acquired in Germany helped you out later in life?
No, except some of the habits as far as time to go to bed and time to eat, and adjusting my life that I live a little healthier, I think, after I got out.
Yeah.
Before I went in, I kept all kinds of hours. It didn't bother if I got in real late at night. I could still get up early in the morning and go to work. But in the Army, you went to bed early and you got up early. And that was no question about doing it that way. You had to.
What was the culture like in Germany?
Very nice. I think it's very nice. As far as whatever I know about it, I watched it. My friend took me to. Him and I went with another German to a factory, glass factory, where they actually were making grinding glasses, drinking glasses, putting a design on the outside of the glass on a emery wheel that was driven from a shaft up in the ceiling on a belt drive down there below, and they were taking the glasses and hand guiding it across this grinding wheel to grind the little designs in the glasses themselves, and they were doing that with just one at a time. And I bought a set of the crystal from him that I watched them make. So I do have a set of glasses, crystal glasses from him.
You still have those today?
And he shipped them home for me.
Oh,
yes.
Wow. So, as far as handcraft items, were there a lot of artisans there? Did they make a lot of their own, handcrafted materials to live off of, as opposed to going to the, a mall to get?
Well, of course, they didn't have malls or anything like that.
Yeah.
I never did see one.
Mm-hmm.
If they had them, I didn't know.
Did you do anything for recreation in Germany? Were there any?
I didn't play football or baseball or basketball or anything. I didn't involve in any of those sports. I just didn't have time, I don't guess. I don't know why I didn't, but I didn't.
Where were you when the war ended?
No, of course it never did end, but I was home. I was dead. I had been discharged. The fighting was all over. The conflict was all over.
What were your feelings when the war was coming to an end?
Well, I'm happy because it was a senseless war as far as we were all concerned, and nothing was gained from it. And all we did was lose a lot of lives of young men over there that shouldn't have been lost. So I think it was a senseless war, as many of them are, as we know it today too. So that was our only feeling there. So you were never faced with any combat, but did you ever hear stories about combat or casualties? Did any of that ever come back to you? Just by hearsay? Not really. No. My brothers both came out alive, fortunately, and they did not get wounded. Neither one of them did, and they are both in the front line active duty in the fighting zones.
Wow.
But none were wounded or anything. There are no prisoners of war and no missing in actions.
It's very good. Good. How did you return home?
From Germany to here?
Mm-hmm.
By ship. They didn't fly troops at that time. I went over there on a ship. I have to remember the name of the ship that I went over on. It was the USS General Rose. And I don't remember the ship that I came back on, but I do remember going through a bad storm, coming back, and all of us were on one side of the ship, away from the wind again, so the wind wasn't hitting us. And the captain got on the radio on the loudspeaker, and told certain barracks to get over on the other side of the boat, that they were going to tip it over. If they didn't, some of them didn't move. If half of them didn't move to the other side of the boat. So we all moved over, and I was one of them that had to go over on the windy side of the boat.
Oh
But it was a strong, cold wind, as I recall.
That was on the trip coming home.
That was on the ship coming home, yes,
And then where did that ship take you?
to New York.
New York.
And then I flew from New York to, no. They took a train, I think it was, to the camp for discharge, yeah. Took a train there. And then they let me come home and get my car while I was down there. And so when I got my final discharge papers, I had my own car there, and I drove home from there.
And where was home?
LaGrange, Illinois.
Okay. So you were born and raised in this area, and you
No, I
stayed
was born in Valparaiso, Indiana.
in Valparaiso.
Then my
in the Midwest.
parents moved. I went to a 2-room schoolhouse down there in Indiana. And when I came up here, my folks moved to Brookfield. And I went to Riverside Brookfield High School by myself because my mother didn't want to get out in public that much. So I went to that high school by myself, and I had to take a streetcar to get there. The streetcars were running through Brookfield right to the school. So that's how I got to school then.
Okay.
And I finished all high school. I finished 1 year there, and my folks moved to LaGrange. I went to Lyons Township High School, and then on to Lyons Township Junior College, which was still located in the high school building, in the tower building, at the top floor of the tower building. Now they got another name for it, but they moved the college out of there. It's now called College of DuPage.
Okay. How were you received by your family and the community when you returned home?
Very well. I mean, I got a really close-knit family, and everybody with open arms, really, and there didn't seem to be any problem with people or anything else when I came back. I got a job right away, and I went to work with my brother at a filling station at first, before I got a job at Dual Company.
How did you readjust to civilian life? It sounds like you got a job right away.
It wasn't difficult for me at all. I mean, when I got out, I think maybe that's why today I don't have any of my papers from discharge and memories. I just sort of blanked everything out. I didn't join any of the reserves or anything. But when I got out of the Army, it was it. I was all done with anything to do with the Army. And I didn't have any obligations at all. So I was right back into civilian life. And it was only 2 years. It wasn't that bad. Getting readjusted, it wasn't that bad, I mean.
Do you ever reflect on your experience in the military? Do you ever look back on it?
No, not normally.
Yeah.
Sometimes I enjoy talking about it like I'm talking to you now. But in general conversation, not too much. Sometimes I'll meet up with somebody like Joe that was in here earlier, and we discuss, he was in World War II and a couple other. So him and I talk about our time in the service, but that's all.
Have you reunited with any other fellow veterans that
No,
you
I have
served
not.
with?
That I knew in the Army?
Uh-huh.
No, I didn't. I haven't joined up with anybody other than that one man by the name of Lloyd Shanks. He's the only one that I got to be really close friends with.
Yeah.
And we traveled together while I was over there. We went up to Sweden for a weekend trip. Took a train right up there. That's the only thing I did.
So what kind of things did you do in Sweden?
Not much. We went for a boat ride and we had dinner. And that's about it. We went drinking and, of course, had a couple of bars and celebrated a little bit, but didn't do anything, didn't meet up with anybody up there or anything.
What was the culture in Sweden similar to Germany?
From what I could tell, I was only there for the weekend.
Yeah.
So it wasn't much, but from what I could tell, the people were friendly.
Yeah. What was the weather like in Sweden?
It wasn't bad when I was there.
Yeah.
I mean, we wore our regular Army Ike jacket, but nothing, I don't remember wearing any overcoats or anything.
Were you well received by citizens in Sweden? Were you welcomed by them?
Yeah, the ones that we met, we didn't meet that many. But yeah, we were welcome here. Soldiers were welcome then.
Are you a member of any veterans organizations?
No, I'm not. I don't go belong to the vets. I lived right up the road from the vets club in Genoa, Illinois, when I lived over there. But I didn't join the club or anything.
What have you done since separating from the military?
Well, I've had two main jobs. One of them was with the WWII company where I was there for just a little over 10 years. I was 5 years as sales at a regional office out of Des Plaines, Illinois. And then I took over the same WWII store as their sales manager for another 5 years. And then I left there. I went with a foreign company making precision instruments that's called Mitutoyo. And I was there for a little over 10 years. And once again, I worked my way up to be a manager of the Chicago region. And I had 7 salesmen working under me there. And that's where I spent the rest of my time until about retirement time. And then when I did retire from there, I went back to work in South Elgin here.
Okay. How did your wartime experiences affect your life, if at all?
I don't think any.
No.
I don't believe it at all. Not knowingly, I don't remember anything that particularly struck me anyhow.
Any life lessons you learned from your military service?
Anyone?
Any life lessons you've learned?
Well, like I say, just to be on schedule a little bit more than ever before. Mm-hmm. And to eat properly and treat your bodies right. And that's about it.
Did it teach you anything about discipline?
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
You had to be disciplined, and even more so when I became cadre and had the job of instructing these people. It's taught me that too, how to deal with people regularly. Mm-hmm. In a very unfriendly climate, I should say. Nobody there wanted to be in the Army, of course.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, nobody likes to get up, leave home, and be drafted. I remember, my first night, I remember twin boys that were in the bunk next to me, and they spent the evening crying, and they were big boys. They were farm boys that had been used only to being on the farm, and they were there in the Army now, and it was altogether a new environment for them, and they actually wept all night long. So it was difficult for them, but not for me. I didn't have any trouble.
So the change was difficult for a lot of people around you, you would say?
Well, yeah, it was certainly a different routine. Mm-hmm. You had to, you don't collect a paycheck at the end of the week or go out and do what you want to with it, but you do get a paycheck, and not that much to spend it on, really.
Yeah.
But other than having to get up every morning early and get out to the company grounds and report, and then go to whatever they got to send for you. Either a march out to the firing range or someplace else. You had to march there. So that was all just a routine of life. You had to have a regular routine. You had to live by the schedule.
What would a typical day look like for you?
Well, hour by hour, I don't know, but in general, it was just a case of getting up and going down to the mess hall and having breakfast. And we had our own cooks at that time. I understand now they even have their meals brought into the room rather than making their own. But they had their own cooks. And so I went down for that. And then went back to the barracks and either cleaned your clothes, did your laundry, or did something like that. I didn't have anything special. If we had to go out for a march or something, then we had to do that. So that was all part of the routine of going on any work that they had to do, mm-hmm. And then going back at night and having supper, dinner, and then going to bed. And it always got to bed early, so I forget what the time the lights had to go out, but there was a time they shut the lights off. And you had to go to bed. You had to be asleep by that time. Or you had bed at least.
How has your military service impacted your feelings about war or the military in general?
It really hasn't changed too much. I always did think that when my brothers went in the Army, I was always scared that they were going to get killed for some reason or another in a foreign land. I never understood that they were there trying to keep this country free as much as I do now, that the troops up there are dying for our good and rather than for themselves. So they're dying to keep this country free so we don't have to have all those terrorists here all the time and bombing going on around our country.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who will view or hear this interview?
Well, I believe in people and doing well for people and doing the best you can with whatever you undertake to do. Like being here, you still got to live this life and you got to get along with 150 other people that are in a similar situation. And if you learn to get along with people in general, I think that's a good thing in life to do, to know how to handle yourself in public.
Okay, so let's jump back to your early days of service, the types of training you had to go through. Was it it probably was one of the most difficult times for you. Can you kind of expand on the training you received and the challenges that you were faced with during that time?
Well, yeah, the worst part was getting on the train and going or the train to meet the other groups, and then going into Fort Leonard Wood and being processed there into the new life altogether. And it was very, very interesting and a real big change. Although basic training wasn't that difficult. Physically, it wasn't that bad. I had infantry training to start with for 8 weeks. And then in that way, there's a lot of marching, a lot of walking, a lot of climbing and physical work to get up and do things. And then, of course, going out and learning. Then we went to an engineering fort down there, and they changed it into an engineering area, and I had to go through another basic training period to get the engineer training. And that was very interesting in some parts. And then when I got assigned to Cadre, why I lived off base, and I had a trailer there in a trailer park, and that was a different kind of a life also. But being a trainee and training other men in large groups, as I did, I don't know how many I did altogether, but I probably trained at least 200 300 other guys in the building that bridge and the my own warfare park. I had at least another 200 people in that joint venture.
So what would you say to a young man or woman who was debating joining the Army or just the military in general?
Oh, I highly encourage it, particularly anybody that's having a difficult life, either with their family or with society. I highly suggest getting that Army training and learning how to get along with people and how to do a job and how to work and how to be on time for things and not disrespect the elders and your people that are over ahead of you. So I think it's very good. I had 3 sons, and I would have encouraged each of them to go to the service. But fortunately, they didn't have to go. They weren't drafted, and they made out just fine. They didn't have any trouble at home or with working. They've all done very well. So I suggest that people that right now hard to get a job, go to the Army and they feed you and pay you and you learn something, and besides that you're helping protect our country. So I think it's a good thing for the volunteer Army to keep going, and for men and women both. I'm glad to see the women getting involved in it now just as much as the men.
Mm-hmm.
that's probably a good thing for them to do that. I don't know what all that's going to lead to in the future, but there were no women in. There was a WWII Corps and the Wave. The WWICs were Army, and the Waves, of course, were Navy girls that served with the Red Cross and some of the centers where the servicemen could go for entertainment and drinking and so forth. So that's where they had, in their hospitals they served. A lot of them in the hospitals. But I think the men, I don't know of anybody that it wouldn't do something good for. They need to have that experience of being in the Army and knowing what it's like for other people, and it never does any harm. It never does any harm that I could see. It did me a lot of good, I know that.
Good. Would you say that your time in the service has maybe culturized you a little bit? You got to travel the world, you got to go to Europe, and you got to go to places that a lot of people don't get the opportunity to travel to in their lifetime. And the military kind of gave you the opportunity to do that. Do you feel...
I was very lucky in that respect. And I do appreciate that. And it did do me a lot of good culturally, just saying that you were in Germany and meeting those people and watching the way they farm their land. And I stayed one night in one of their homes, and it was very interesting to watch their home life and how they lived and everything. And that was good. It was very similar to the Army, to the U.S., but a little more organized, I would say. And the children are a little more obedient to their parents. They're very obedient, I would say. But it helped me. I didn't get to, other than the one trip to Sweden for over a weekend, where I didn't meet very many people there. But that was a nice trip too, a good trip to say that we were in someplace else.
Yeah. So is there anything else that we haven't gone over in this interview that you would like to discuss about your service?
No, I think probably, in general, I probably led a better Army career or life than most people that I talked to. The fact that I was drafted and then lucky enough to go to school and get the education on training people and being how to be an instructor, I think that did me a lot of good. It did a lot of practice of being with people and addressing crowds of people. It doesn't bother me to get in front of a crowd and talk anymore like it would have been a long time ago, but not anymore. It doesn't. But I would say the Army helped that.
Good. Well, on behalf of Unity Hospice, we just want to thank you so much for donating your time and coming in here and sharing your story, and especially thank you so much for your service to our country.
Thank you very much. Thank you.